Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Reimagine 13. Our last event was on Bored Apes and NFTs. Really excited to be talking about Parachains and interoperability for this event. I'm your host, Roshan Mirajkar, and today our panel will be discussing NFTs, metaverses, and just the future of the digital economy and how it can benefit your daily life. But first, let's meet some of our guests today. So I'll let you all go around. Please introduce yourself. Bruno, you can get us started.
Sure. Hi, I'm Bruno. I'm the founder of RMRK, which is a set of standards that enables NFTs 2.0 to exist. I used to work at the Web3 Foundation before, where I originally started RMRK. Before that, I was at Ethereum 2.0 working on the Nimbus client. And before that, just generally educating Web2 developers to get into Web3 and just, training developers. Good to be here.
Awesome. Christine.
Hi, Christine Mohan. I am VP of Business Development with KILT Protocol, which is an identity blockchain. I was with Bruno earlier at Web3 Foundation, where I was CMO, and we both launched Polkadot. Very exciting couple of years. Before that, I was then at a consensus project called Civil, which was a newsroom built on blockchain for syndication and verification, part of the Consensus and Ethereum family. And before that, digital media, so New York Times, Wall Street Journal in New York. And so I've been on both the Web 2, Web 3 side.
Very cool. And lastly, Kenny.
My name's Kenny. I'm one of the co-founders of Manta Network, a privacy protocol built on Polkadot. And prior to this, I was not at the Web3 Foundation, but I was pursuing my MBA at MIT Sloan at the time, where I was working for the Digital Currency Initiative and the teaching assistant for all the blockchain courses there. And prior to that, I was in the cloud computing space. And that's kind of where I got my start into blockchain, specifically Bitcoin mining, just because I was more on the infrastructure side and looking at ways to cover operational expenses of servers that had to be on 24/7 anyway. So yeah.
Awesome. Great to have you all here. Love all the dynamic backgrounds, and let's sort of get into our discussion today. So first question is to Bruno, and kind of want to start at the top level. So can you kind of break down, what is it about Polkadot's infrastructure that you found particularly beneficial for your project, as opposed to any of the other networks that are existing out there right now?
Sure. So we're building NFTs that are not possible anywhere else. And they're not possible for many different reasons, but some of those are the fact that in Polkadot, you have the ability to optimize your infrastructure for whatever you need to execute in the best possible way, performance-wise and storage-wise. And when you use a general purpose blockchain like Ethereum or some other blockchain that allows you to just arbitrarily program something, you lack that specific optimization. And so you can never squeeze out the very best out of your project, especially if you do something really, really advanced. The other reason is the interoperability. So in Polkadot, there's essentially a guarantee that a message can be trustlessly sent across from one chain to another chain. And pretty soon, there's also going to be a guarantee built into the entire chain layer that this message is also going to be executed in the correct way. So there's no more misinterpretation of messages, and there is no more weakest link problem like in other bridges where, if something is bridged and then the chain with less security gets hacked, it's a mess on the chain with higher security if it uses the bridged assets from the weaker chain. So here we have native interoperability between these different chains. And as we're building RMRK to be present on all of these chains in the Polkadot ecosystem, some really magical use cases can be made possible. For example, right now there's a project in progress that rewards everybody who votes. So Polkadot has the concept of forkless upgrades where people can actually vote on chain to change the runtime of the chain itself. And this is done through referenda voting. And historically, all blockchain voting has very low turnout. But recently a project popped up using RMRK and our nested NFTs and non-transferable or so-called soul-bound NFTs to give every voter on a referendum a trophy shelf. And for every vote you do on such on a referendum in the Kusama ecosystem, you get a little trophy, and you can equip those trophies into the trophy shelf. Now, this does more than just visually indicate how active you are on chain. It encompasses your entire on-chain reputation in one visual NFT that not just looks good, but is also portable across all of these other chains that are naturally connected in the Polkadot ecosystem, allowing you to utilize that reputation which you've now built in different ways. For example, you can then take that reputation, that one NFT that holds all of your reputation, into a DeFi ecosystem like a Kala or something similar, and maybe get an under collateralized loan, because now your reputation is the collateral. So you have this native interoperability of Polkadot components is what actually allows your project to truly reach its full potential, because you never know what other projects might use your stuff for. And this is what's most appealing to us.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and excited to learn more. And as we progress in the discussion about the future of NFTs and what are some problems that can be solved. But maybe Christine, if you want to jump in and kind of talk about for kind of digital identity, why pick Polkadot compared to some of the other networks that exist?
Sure. So digital identity and identity in general are quite universal. And so our CEO, Ingo, comes from a business background, corporate background. He was CTO of Axel Springer. And so as he came up with some use cases for applications built on KILT, he kept running up, or even before he was building, he kept running up against just the gas fees and the unpredictability of costs. And so when you're going in and talking to big corporates and you can't really predict or help them model out what the cost could be to build something, it becomes quickly not as interesting a conversation or a technology they might want to adopt anytime soon. So that was a big part of, at that point, he was looking around at Ethereum, and then Substrate was very early. We became one of the first builders on Substrate back in, I think, 2018 or so, 2019. And so, having that toolkit and then being part of the builders program, and then the other reason, which has grown up around us, is the ecosystem. So there are a lot of great projects and teams within the Kusama and Polkadot ecosystems. I'm at Davos now. We just finished a couple of days of really great events hosted by Polkadot. And so we met and pretty quickly spun up some ideas with Origin Trail and Robonomics, and we're really excited to be working with them and testing out some of these use cases, because digital identity has certainly a lot of applications across the different projects. So it's really exciting. Nice to be back in person again and talking with people about and seeing how passionate the ecosystem is.
For sure. And Kenny, if you kind of want to add, what's your perspective on why your team kind of is choosing to build on Polkadot?
Yeah, sure. So I think a lot of the points were already touched upon previously in a lot of detail, so I'll just keep it fairly high level. What's really unique about our approach to deciding on Polkadot is that we are using zero knowledge proofs for on-chain privacy. And so, long story short, zero knowledge proofs enables the shielded applications, or the shieldedness of transactions that occur on chain. So you can see that something happened without being able to access any of the details there. The issue with zero knowledge proofs, though, is that it's very compute expensive. So it's hard to scale. And so in order to really build a privacy application, a privacy network that we believe people will use, we need to, one, focus on scalability. And so in order to focus on scalability, we can't really build as a decentralized application, right? Because when you're building as a dApp, yes, you can build out the functionality, but you can't really control things like the consensus layer in the network itself, right? And so naturally, what we leaned towards was, okay, so that means that we have to build our own sort of L1 network. The issue with building just an L1 network, though, is that you are in your own little world. You're isolated from the rest of the Web3 ecosystems. And so the question now becomes, okay, who will use us? Because if you want to bring privacy to the user, you have to go to the user rather than asking the user to just come to you. And so the natural answer to that was interoperability. Because if we're able to plug into other projects, then we would be able to bring privacy to said projects and allow for the users to interact with our network without having to ruin their entire user experience by moving their assets off of one network onto another through potentially bridging, security issues, etc. And so we looked into things like bridging solutions as an L1, and we looked at Polkadot, and we looked at a few other things as well. But because of Polkadot's XCM, I think, again, without getting into too much details, we can explore this later. Long story short, the natural choice was Polkadot, because then we can build as both an L1, which is what we needed for the scalability side, but also be able to plug into other assets within other L1 ecosystems.
Yeah, 100%. And no, we will get into XCM a bit down the line, because I don't want to make it too technical, but I think, it might be important for like the future of communication in the metaverse, and of course between blockchains. But I kind of want to go down this path that, now that you started it, down privacy and security. So I think one of the questions, and I'll go to Christine first for this, is as the number of metaverses grow, as people are making them, so do some of the challenges. Some of the challenges being, you're validating your digital identity in the metaverse, and also making sure all of your actions that you're doing also stay private. So Christine, what is your perspective on, how should people be thinking about their digital identity in the metaverse? And do you see any benefits on, building on Polkadot versus other ecosystems?
Sure. Well, there's even a number of metaverse projects that are popping up within the Polkadot ecosystem already. So it's going to be great to be able to work with them. As you touched on with XCM, the ability to maybe, sending messages and NFTs to each other, the ability to, there are a couple pieces within XCM, including certification, that fit really well with what KILT does. But also we're looking beyond Polkadot ecosystem to be able to allow people to move their identities and their assets from one metaverse to the other. So that's kind of a longer view. Short-term view is certainly partnering with projects within the ecosystem. But certainly there are quite a few roles for KILT applications within the metaverses we're seeing. So for instance, Momentum Odyssey, which is fairly new, is building a Kusama universe, and that's going to be really exciting in that you can see your staking activity. One of our applications we just launched called Web3 Name. You can actually take your string of letters and numbers, which is your digital identifier, and actually choose and customize your name. So right now, when you go on that stake board, you can see all the collators and their actually branded name, their entity. And so that adds a layer of verification and trust to, whether that's the staking platform that we have, whether it's the staking board you see on the metaverse for Odyssey. So it's again, the ability to verify maybe contracts within the metaverse, real estate within the metaverse. There's certainly a lot of applications for KILT in both the identity piece, but also the verification piece and credentials.
Yeah, because I think in this future digital economy, that will kind of be the basis of trust, right? The assets that you're showing people digitally, we need to make sure they're hack proof. We need to make sure a lot of the actions that people are doing in the metaverse, not everyone can see them. I think I'll jump to you next, Bruno. Maybe if you want to talk about what role do you see the future of NFTs have as the metaverse develops? So maybe can you talk a little bit about, what exactly do you mean by multi-resource NFTs? I think everyone is so used to these profile pictures that they can't really have a vision for what the future might look like with NFTs.
Yeah, sure. Well, the thing is that like Remark NFTs in general are the final evolutionary stage of NFTs. So they're not going to go beyond that. You can hold me to it. And that's because they allow 99% of all NFT use cases and problems to be solved by just composing these primitives that we've created. And so this allows many different things but among them, one of the most important ones in this market is decentralized metaverses. So there is no metaverse today in development or production that is actually a metaverse. They're all multiplayer games that just replaced usernames and passwords with reading an NFT balance. and they're all running on centralized servers, which means that as games attack each other with vampire attacks, or as players get sick of this, or as these play to earn economies dry up because tokens that are just showered on people trend towards zero, you end up with servers that are too expensive to maintain, and they will inevitably shut down. As they shut down, the players will lose their experience because their NFTs are just simple JPEGs. They've not really accomplished anything. They don't own their experience. What Remark allows you to do here is twofold. One, it allows a fully decentralized and downtime resistant metaverse to exist, but it also embeds all of this ownership of experience into the NFTs. So the argument that, for example, gamers have against NFTs in general is you can't take a skin from Counter-Strike and put it into Fortnite. It doesn't make sense as a simple NFT, and that is correct. That is a good assumption, but it is the wrong context, because you can't really think about going to the moon on a horse. If you're thinking about going to the moon on a horse, then you cannot go there. You need a rocket. So the rocket is a multi-resource NFT. A multi-resource NFT is an NFT that can be multiple things at once. The output depends on the context. So just like you can have a multi-resource NFT ebook that is at the same time an audio file and a PDF file, and if you load it into Audible, it'll just play the audio file, and if you load it into Kindle, it'll just load the PDF, but it's part of the same NFT. It's like two sides to a vinyl record. The same applies to any other NFT and any other media type. So in this case, when you're dealing with a game skin, the same NFT will have one model for Counter-Strike and one model for Fortnite. And therefore, as you trade one skin, you get the output that is needed from this for both games. As NFTs contain every single piece of asset that is needed to make them compatible with any other metaverse out there, not only are they portable between all of these environments, but they can also be given new utility over time. They don't die. The hype doesn't, die out and then they collect just dust. Instead, as new metaverses and games show up, you can just add new resources, new context, new outputs to them, and they evolve with the universe around them. So they're made more valuable because they are made more compatible with more things. And as they're compatible with more things, there's more demand for them. So this is one aspect. The other aspect is just nested NFTs in general, NFTs owning other NFTs. These allow you to get really creative with evolving the experience of an NFT in a decentralized way. For example, as you play the game, you might have an avatar that's level 1. That avatar can only be in a plot of metaverse land, and the metaverse land is also an NFT, if you literally put that avatar inside a piece of land. Now, in current metaverses, you can log into 1,000 different instances of the same game with the same NFT. You can even sell the NFT while you're playing and nothing happens. But here, that NFT can only be in one place at one time. So you have true digital scarcity as originally promised by NFTs. Additionally, this avatar of yours can have a non-transferable NFT inside of it, so a soul-bound NFT inside of it, that is an NFT brain. And that brain can have a pathfinding algorithm, crafting recipes, personality. All of these are non-transferable NFTs inside of these other NFTs. It can even, your character can even collect skills, and that brain can have skill slots into which you need to equip these skills. And you might have fewer skill slots than you have skills, so you need to level up to get more slots. And all of this is possible in a decentralized way. You have the old school RPG mechanics built right into the NFT layer that is not at all gamer focused. It is just developed in a way that when you put these puzzles together, it just fits and you can make this happen. So this is what allows you to have the full state of a metaverse always on chain without needing a server to run it on. And so if that goes down, you still own all of your experience. NFTs are now generational wealth, basically. You can pass down your avatar to your grandson. Here, Bobby, this is what I used to own people in Fortnite 14. Now you do it to own people in Fortnite 75. So, it's just ownership of experience, ownership of everything you've accomplished in a game that doesn't go away when a server goes down. And this is to me the most exciting part as we're building out this multi-chain, multiverse infrastructure for just cross-collection compatibility of NFTs.
Yeah, no, great explanation. Actually, I think for our audience, I think they can really relate to that, and I 100% agree with you. I love this excitement with dynamic NFTs. I think there are too many NFTs, out there right now. It's like 10,000 collection times, unlimited, right? So I think it's a great point. Kenny, I'll jump to you next on this last question on this topic. Maybe if you want to kind of talk about like what is going to be the role of ZK snarks or privacy in the metaverse. It seems everyone is really excited to join in and have all these interactions, but we have to remember, like right now, as kind of Bruno is saying too, like there's not really any active metaverse, but even the ones that are active right now, it's like everything is on chain, everything is transparent, which is good. But yeah, Kenny, maybe talk about a little bit about where's the balance between where we need privacy in the metaverse, as weird as it sounds.
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely when it comes to blockchain, there's two things to consider when it relates to privacy. One is the full transparency, and two is the immutability. And so when you look at metaverse, right, it's not just about what's in metaverse today, but what's going to be metaverse in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, because ultimately it's all linked, right? What metaverse is today and your interactions in metaverses today is going to be just as transparent as your interactions in metaverses 10 years from now. And that's an issue because the full transparency, right? On the one hand, it sounds like a really amazing idea, but without that optionality of privacy, now all of a sudden there's a lot of linkages with any sort of transaction that you make, any interaction that you make that occurs on chain in these types of metaverses. There's a lot of implications that go with that, right? I mean, a lot of it kind of boils down to some of the issues that we see on the internet today with just normal gaming and social media interactions, such as cyberbullying, stalking, fraud, right? How do these issues evolve if you have not just metaverse, but a Web3 with no optionality of privacy? Because in that case, right, you make an innocent transaction to someone in a game, they now see all of your wallet assets from that wallet address, and that can be tracked very easily because everything is public. And a very concrete example that we see today is Twitter, right? You go to Twitter. I don't know when the last time you logged into Twitter was, but they have a notification now where they say, hey, now you can link your NFTs to Twitter. So just verify your wallet address with us and we'll, show the world that you own this NFT. Okay, that sounds great on the one hand, but on the other hand, now you're basically revealing your identity linked to certain wallet addresses, and Twitter has access to that identity, has access to your wallet address, can see all of your assets. What are the implications from an advertising perspective, right? Now that they know, can estimate your potential net worth in the Web3 space, et cetera, right? So like, I think the issue with a lack of any optionality and privacy in the metaverse, right? Like right now, because we're just starting to explore this space, it seems a little bit unnecessary. But if you really zoom out 5 years, 10 years from now, I think definitely the optionality and privacy is not just inevitable, but required in order for real global scalability and global usage for these types of applications.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's a great point, and I think everyone figured that out on the payments node at first, right? Everyone was like, "Oh, we need like privacy and payments," and now we're kind of talking more about the social element, more about these different applications that are being built. I kind of want to zoom out for a second and talk about some current events that's been happening just in the Polkadot ecosystem and some discussions that have been going on. So I kind of want to focus on the role of governance and even how that ties in with kind of politics and what's going on right now. So let's kind of talk about, I know Christine, you're at Davos right now. Do you kind of want to break down, do you see any benefits having kind of like do you see any benefits to governance having a parachain infrastructure model compared to something like Ethereum and some of the more other networks that are completely open, and you kind of see some downsides like large whales just like taking over the voting? And maybe if you even want to tell us like why do you think it's so important to have Polkadot's role at Davos this year?
Well, even being at Davos went through a governance vote, so supporting the funding, the space, So our presence actually at Davos as an ecosystem was made possible or verified, validated, voted on, approved through governance. So that's a really interesting, and we're seeing that more and more. We're seeing projects go to Polk Assembly, pitch their proposal in ways that will support the ecosystem. WAG Media is doing some great work, bringing some content creators and funding that way. In terms of the things that were discussed here, most as I went to different sessions, Ripple was here, Circle, CV Labs, and Casper. And so actually the focus of most of those sessions was really about Metaverse. I was surprised to see how sophisticated some of these worlds are becoming. And again, is it like the Web3, economics and these systems. So I think, to go back to what Kenny said, having, and actually I was at another conference before in Munich, DLD, which is a mix of politics, tech, and media. And again, a lot of fascination from, quote, Web 2 people in what's going on with Metaverse and decentralization, and these philosophies that are quite new to the average mainstream consumer. But it's going to be so critical, cyberbullying, cyberstalking, counterfeit, reputation layers, all of these are a mix of privacy and identity. And so having solutions that will carry in or that will be new for Metaverse, for NFTs, are going to be critical. We don't want to, this is our world to build, and we know what hasn't worked in, online. We know it hasn't worked in online and social discourse. And so it's really interesting to watch what some of our peers are building, especially. So for us, we're trying to allow people to verify parts of their identity, parts of their social accounts, and then that could be used within Metaverse space to either gain entry, level up, or even revoke. A space could actually revoke someone's credentials if their behavior was not appropriate to maybe the community governance. So it's very interesting to see the frameworks of governance, decentralization, all brand new topics move into this world. And now we actually have the tools to hopefully avoid some of the more unfortunate situations we've seen.
Yeah, definitely. And Kenny, I don't know if you have anything to add here in terms of, I've seen a lot of interesting articles just comparing like specifically Ethereum and Polkadot, what will the future of Web3, like the foundation, what will it be built on? For you, what do you think is maybe one to three things, like foundational things that you think is important, like when we're communicating with others online in this decentralized way? If you maybe want to compare some things that we've seen, some bad things that have happened on Ethereum, right? Like the wormhole hack, things like that, people trying to bridge over. So do you think there's anything native that, since Polkadot already has some of these things built in, that might give it an advantage as far as Web3 growth?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that you use the term native, right? Like, I mean, I guess fundamentally native, like the comparison you made between like wormhole versus like XCM, right? Like, I think that's two very different approaches, and XCM by its nature is a lot more secure within the Polkadot ecosystem. There isn't really a single point of vulnerability there, but when I think about native within Polkadot, it's almost really interesting because all the applications building on Polkadot become part of the native infrastructure of Polkadot in some way due to XCM, right? And so, when we're building Manta Network, we're not just thinking, okay, we're going to build Manta Network and we're going to ask users to just use our network and whatever it may be. It's more so, okay, now that we've gotten this privacy technology built out, let's start plugging this into all the other Polkadot projects in the ecosystem. And so now, KILT can have ZKP privacy, and Akala can have ZKP privacy, and Remark and Moonbeam, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? And so now in some kind of funny way, right, Manta Network's privacy is privacy is now a native feature of Polkadot. And so you can expand this example into all the different use cases that are building out as parachains within the Polkadot ecosystem, right? So there's use case specific sort of applications, but there's also more like infrastructure builds, like our approach. So I think more of the parachains that are coming online that are focused on the infrastructure side and enhancing the user experience, what's the parachain ecosystem going to look like a year from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now? What are the tool sets that other parachains will be able to leverage from each other that are part of the native ecosystem, right? I think that's only beginning to be explored. Yeah.
Yep, I completely agree with what Kenny said in terms of having these base layer technologies that'll be part of this native structure for Polkadot. We are working with Parity, which is the technology firm that launched Polkadot in Kusama, and formed a whole ecosystem in some ways, led by Gav Woods. And we're working with them on a palette for NFTs, and that'll incorporate the KILT DIDs, where you see some projects, smaller, newer projects like BitGreen that are going to be working on palettes through to offset, carbon credits for across all of the parachains. Across Summer will have the option to work with and to make Polkadot even more sustainable than it already is, and it's already quite at the top of the green chain, so to speak. So it's really nice that we're able to not only envision kind of our own future for our applications, but also add on layers that we haven't thought of already, or plug them in and build out something even better that we didn't envision or that would take a lot longer to build.
Yeah, 100%. And I'll just go to you quickly, Bruno, or kind of open up the topic on, I kind of want to shift and talk about actual use cases, or if you guys have actual applications that people can kind of understand better, how can they use a lot of the things you guys are building today? Because I think the end user experience is important. And obviously you guys are doing a lot of the work behind the scenes, but a lot of the users won't maybe understand a lot of these specific technologies, but they will understand the benefits. So maybe Bruno, if you want to talk a little bit about, do you see a world where enterprises will start to get more into NFTs on networks like Polkadot and, either other like layer 1 or other layer 2 protocols, like other than Ethereum? Like, do you think that's sort of held back adoption for, enterprises, government, things like that?
I think the lack of functionality is what held it back for the most part. But it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy on Ethereum, where most of the NFT action is, because it's too expensive to do anything else other than, just have an image and have it in your wallet. So when you have an NFT system with which you can do a lot more, you also need an environment in which it is affordable to do a lot more. So the first step is to actually unlearn everything that people know about NFTs, including enterprises, and stop thinking about them as links to images, or even the very wrong definition of thinking about them as images. So stop thinking of them as links to images or media in general, and think of them as rows of information for which you can cryptographically prove that you own them. And when you think about it this way, then a lot of different use cases can, come into existence, because you no longer are constrained by these primitive definitions. You can really start thinking about relational databases in a way, using the information to represent some really interesting concepts. Like if you take, for example, something as cliche as real estate from the real world, and now it makes sense, because now you can have a land deed that is an NFT, or just a house deed or whatever. Inside of that NFT can be a photo album of the last reconstruction project on the house. Beside that one, there can be another photo album of the one before. All the owner information can be inside of that one NFT. It is all contextually connected because this NFT can do this. So a lot of this starts to make sense in terms of rich data that you can represent in the NFT system itself. And so for use cases, yes, we are already discussing with some entities, some very interesting ones. But I think the one that's going to really take the world by storm and all of a sudden right now is the one that already has, I think, two 2 realizations in production and 3 in development, and that is reputational avatars. So this is something that people are already building and using. This is the same thing as I mentioned before, the shelf with the trophies, but applied on many different scales. For example, there's this prediction market chain in the .sama ecosystem called Zeitgeist, and they will be giving every chain user an avatar that get more non-transferable swag in them as they participate in these prediction markets on the chain. So as you're participating in prediction markets, your performance will be represented as equipable swag in your avatar. So you have gamified Web3 participation. The metaverse that we're building, Skybreach, and the metaverse that we're building with our partners from Fala using this new framework that we're developing. So Fala in particular has gamified Web3 participation in a way that is geared towards the newer generation. You don't level up your character with whom you play the game. You don't level it up by playing the game. You level it up by being a good Web3 citizen. And so if you make a highly viral post on a Web3 subreddit and get a lot of karma, if you make a good tweet thread, if you make any kind of that action, or if you participate in on-chain operations like voting, staking, being a nominator, proposing tips, and so on, all of this is then turned into non-transferable NFTs inside of your avatar, which then you can use to level it up. So you level up your character by being a good Web3 citizen, and so this is like gamifying participation in Web3 environments, and this is going to be packaged up in this new framework that we have as an easy to launch thing that enterprises can actually just click their way through and launch their own reputational avatar system with almost no effort at all. Additionally, because they're all launched using the RMRK standard, every single tradable accessory on these, every single transferable accessory in this is compatible with every other avatar that is built using this system, which means you have a global item economy going that enables a really powerful creator economy across all of these ecosystems, and also has the additional revenue that these project owners can actually further utilize. So I think this is a very interesting immediate use case that is going to really surprise a lot of people by how much it is growing suddenly.
Yeah, great to see you're doing work, helping enterprises. They're important and they want to kind of get into the industry, and they're doing a bunch of mergers and acquisitions. Yeah, Christine or Kenny, if you guys want to shortly break down, what are some things either you guys are building or applications specific to your industry, like category niche, identities or privacy that you think people can sort of use right now and see the benefits themselves.
Sure.
Christine, you can go first.
Yeah, sure. We just launched DID Sign. So you go to didsign.io. It is a decentralized way to sign not only documents, PDFs, but also audio, video, software. Think of it as there are other signing software that's centralized, that when you sign, often all of those contracts and really important and confidential documents are then stored on a database that's not yours. So this is an approach that would, so basically you would start with our Sporon wallet, which is a wallet that holds not only KILT coins, but also credentials. So you would create, there's a couple steps here, which will become more and more easy as consumers get more used to using wallets as their entry point to Web3. But you'd create your identity, and then you'd actually be able, with that identity, to sign the document or the asset file. And then in a very simple way, so say I'm finishing a real estate transaction or a business deal or even an employee contract, I would sign it from my new employer, and I could send it to them via email or WhatsApp or whatever I'd like to. And then this employer could then, it's a drag and drop website or light layer. So you would just drag that file in, and then it would actually show that it was signed by me. and it was not altered at all between the time that I signed it and the time that I sent it. And then also it would surface my credentials. So it would surface, if I had that in my wallet, my email address. If it was something that was related to a reputation or a social profile, I could show my Twitter, my Discord, my TikTok. And so not only does that have an interesting enterprise use case, but also as folks have a presence or a reputational avatar, that could actually travel with you. Say you're an influencer that wants to charge certain rates for your campaigns, you can actually then prove that you are this person on TikTok, Twitter, and that you have all these followers. So it's a way to kind of bind all these things into something that stays with you. And then if you layer on the Web3 name with your brand, then that's a really nice way to both have a verification layer in a Web3 world, but also in a way that's very easy to use and understand and verify by this external party, an employer, however. So yeah, we're very focused on easy to use applications for KILT because we want mainstream consumers to use them.
Yeah, that's awesome. I can see academics and even some of our university blockchain students kind of dabbling with that. So anyone watching this, I encourage you to. And yeah, lastly, Kenny, if you want to tell us a little bit.
Yeah, so what's really cool about privacy is that, well, two things really cool about privacy when it comes to use cases. One is that I think it will fix broken use cases. And two, I think it will create new use cases that we don't see in the Web3 space today. One of the things that we're working on right now is specifically falling into the first category of fixing broken use cases. And maybe this is controversial, maybe it's not. I think a lot of our team thinks on-chain governance is broken, because right now, if you look at on-chain data, right, and I think Polkadot's one of the better ones, but a lot of these ecosystems outside of Polkadot, like decentralized applications, for example, and these aren't just like, from our own sort of imaginations, right? This is from first-hand accounts talking to founders of these projects. Maybe like 5% of the community even votes, right? And this is if you're lucky. Mm-hmm. And so the issue here is, just giving you an analogy, imagine you're in an oppressive country that has democracy and now you're voting, but the president of that country is watching you vote. How does that affect your vote, right? So that's exactly the kind of phenomenon that we're hearing from a lot of these sort of applications for on-chain voting. Without naming any specific projects, we've heard about founders getting DMs from their own community members who say, hey, I'm actually really against this proposal, and I want you to know that. I'm not going to vote about it, but I wanted you to know that. Why? Because the majority is voting for it, and you're going against the grain, and that's publicly identifiable information. Again, scaling this out from just as simple of a vote as like one application to 5-10 years from now, just as how Twitter started off as just some innocent group of people tweeting and no one took them seriously, to nowadays, right, like a president of a nation tweets and all of a sudden the stock market tanks or everyone prepares for war. I think on-chain governance has that same power of evolution, whereby today people are like, oh yeah, I can use my tokens to vote. 5% of people vote. 5 to 10 years from now, everyone's voting. It's impacting the world on a global scale. But how can you really gauge the sentiment of the population if there is that lack of privacy, right? We are already seeing that problem emerge on this sort of micro level. And so the way that we fix that, the way that we believe we fix that, is to create private on-chain voting. And that's exactly something that we're working on right now with a few other projects.
Yeah, that's obviously voting is pretty important. I think you even touched on it earlier about, just governance. It's like you can have good governance, but if you don't have the privacy aspect, it's kind of like people are peeping through, the transactions and seeing what's going on. Kind of defeats the whole purpose. I want to cover one more topic, and then we'll kind of get everyone's parting thoughts and advice for like builders and things like that. Kind of want to touch on just composability and going back to like just the architecture of Polkadot. So do you guys think, specifically with Parachains, where's the compare and contrast between like Parachains optimizing for specialization, like each Parachain specializing for something, and on the broader scale, how can parachains be used as a standard for kind of commercialization, whether it's for retail users or larger companies? Maybe Bruno, if you want to start.
You're gonna have to rephrase that. I'm not sure I caught it.
Okay, so no, just talking a little bit about composability. Like you have multiple different parachains. So where's the compare and contrast between individual parachains kind of optimizing for their own goals, and I guess as a whole, like how can parachains compete with other L1s or other L2s?
I don't think they should necessarily. It's not really the same game that they're playing. If you have parachains that are specifically optimized for their use case, that doesn't mean that they're at a disadvantage versus existing L1s or something like that. Sure, the moat is there, and you need to. So a lot of the parachains just need to understand that they're all playing on the same team and not compete for resources. This is why we need more education to build more developers, so that there's not, no poaching, no risk of, people leaving and so on. So there has to be that, because we are, all part of one ecosystem now. And if we train developers to think asynchronously, so these applications are no longer, atomic, you just plug a contract into a contract. These are asynchronous, so these are by default much slower than synchronous ones, but safer and more optimized. So very different way of thinking. We just, there's two schools of thought. There's two types of developers now the ecosystem needs a lot in order to succeed with or without other L1s. So this ecosystem will succeed on its own. It's not going to be defeated by other L1s, and it is not going to defeat other L1s. It's not that battle. It's on a different planet. It's not relevant. What's needed right now is you have layer 0 developers who are, well, level 0 developers, let's call them that, who develop the chain related stuff. So these are the Rust devs that develop the palettes and the parachains and all of that. And these are currently in very high demand. A lot of effort is being put into training them and into bringing more of them on board. I personally think that's a little bit misdirected, because we have a severe lack, a much more dramatic and dire lack of level 1 developers who will build on top of these. So we should redirect a lot of money into educational efforts for developers who are now capable of thinking asynchronously about building applications that talk across all of these chains that have come up. So by now we know which chains are sticking around. There are, of course, always contenders. Some of those will predictably disappear. Others we can reliably say will stick around. If we train developers to think in a way that kind of includes at the root level the asynchronous nature of cross-chain communication, this is the next wave of massive growth that is awaiting .sama. Without that level of developers, we will never succeed. We simply must redirect a lot of resources into educating them for this level of development. And in my opinion, this is not a war that you fight with the current L1s or their developers. It is a completely different breed of developers, different set of people. Of course, we all hope that we will take the veterans from the other ecosystems and get them to come over here. But this is, this is ripe for training people in-house. This is ripe for getting people who are Web 2 or just traditional developers and teaching them this new paradigm, but because it is so different from Web 3 over and other L1s that it is basically like starting over. And so we don't have to try and poach Web 3 developers anymore. We can train anybody to build this, and we should train anybody to build this, because this is the next gold rush, and this is the next explosion that's going to happen, in my opinion.
Yeah, everyone has such a competitive nature that people are not used to this sort of thinking. But thank you so much for sharing your perspective. And yeah, Christine or Kenny, I don't know if you guys sort of agree or if you guys have any other thoughts.
I'll jump in again, and then Kenny, you get the last word for the night, yes, or the day, depending on your time zone. I definitely agree with what Bruno said. One, we cannot hire fast enough, and so I'm actually trying to find a marketing director, and I'm searching high and low for Web 2 skills. They can learn a lot of the blockchain terminology and KILT, and I mean, I didn't know a lot about identity and digital identity and DIDs before I came to KILT. So that you just got to hire smart folks and folks who are willing to learn and folks who, as Bruno said, understand this is the next exciting wave of evolution and the gold rush. And when people say, oh, well, how is KILT versus this company, this entity, this identity protocol? We can't build fast enough. There's enough out there for everyone in terms of use cases. We also work with some larger entities, corporates, Fortune 100s, government, and these deals take a long time to close. So at the same time, we're trying to push out fast applications. We're also trying to push on the adoption side, the enterprise adoption side. So we're happy if other people take other types of projects. And the other piece is that for identity, we are trying to take a more, Ingo comes out of, he was on the Drupal board of directors, he comes out of open source. He built some tools for a couple of publishers back in the day, and really sees KILT as being that layer that we really want devs to build applications on top of. To get this going, because there's not a big understanding of digital identity and how it can pertain to different verticals, we built like 5 ourselves pretty rapidly, but we really want now devs to take that and then build their own businesses on KILT, or build an identity, DIDs, something like that, into their own applications, whether it's reputation, privacy, as we were talking about. We're going back to that native layer, right? We're really happy when people we're happy if they skin our wallet. And credentials in a wallet is a fairly new concept. So I think the open source piece of this and the willingness even to talk to other chains, we've got a lot to learn from other chains and how they approach even governance, dev, onboarding. So I think that we have to be careful not to become, Polkadot maxis, and to learn where we can, but also to really bolster our ecosystem so we can all move forward with kind of the best projects available. Over to you, Kenny.
I disagree. All competition. Just to spice up the conversation. Now,
right? Yeah.
I think what's really interesting about the Sama ecosystem is everything can become as a service, and that actually catalyzes the development and growth and helps different up and coming projects prioritize exactly what they want to build out that's core to their use case. And I'll give you one example that we're doing right now, right? So, we're privacy all the way, and that's what we want to focus on. We launched Calamari on Kusama, which is our canary network on Kusama, and Calamari has its own token KMA. And then the community says, oh, well, what sort of staking options are there? Oh, well, we're a privacy network. We're not really thinking about staking or anything. But you know what? If we connect with the Moon River ecosystem or the Korora ecosystem, there is staking options over there, right? And so what are we doing? We're connecting with those other ecosystems to work with them and their projects and their functionality to extend what we currently have without having to focus on building out, a whole staking system ourselves. And so I think that's really unique within the Polkadot ecosystem, and it's really enabled by that XCM that we've been kind of harping on throughout this whole conversation. And so, I think like projects that ultimately want to do everything and want to compete will just not be able to innovate as quickly, right? Because, you guys already mentioned there's way too much stuff to do. We can't even keep up right now. So why try to reinvent the wheel each time? Right now, we can go to the Firestone parachain to buy a wheel. So,
yeah. This is I think this is a great perspective, and I think it's not true across all the other chains or even in our industry. I love the mentality here about kind of working together and not building new things all the time if there's something existing. It was great talking to you all here today. I just want to get everyone, maybe keep it under a minute or less, just your advice for people on what they should be focusing on as the Web3 and Metaverse develops. Start with you, Christine, just go around.
Keep your heads down and just build. Don't get caught up in where the markets are, where your quote competitors might be. And also just like the basics of going from kind of the COVID world to the remote to the team to the just try to get out there and continue your network, because the more we are talking to each other in real life, the more we are networking and getting our message out there is also going to bring people into Web3. It's going to make what we're doing a little less scary or a little more relevant, and also will help with things like hiring and bringing and empowering people who have really strong Web2 backgrounds into Web3, because we really need them.
Awesome. And we'll go to Kenny next.
I guess instead of thinking about what you can potentially solve in terms of problems today, I challenge you to solve problems that you see 5 years from now, 10 years from now, right? In your vision and your bullish vision, hopefully, on where Web3 is headed, right? Because I think those are really the universal problems, and you'll, I think, really find that there's a lot of problems to be solved for that 10-year roadmap that you envision.
Love it. And lastly, Bruno.
Yeah, these are all good tips. Well, for the builders out there, I would say, or for the want to become builders, I would say, don't think he who ships wins. Just go for launch. You know, the image tag in the browsers is called the image tag, the IMG tag, and not the image tag or the picture tag, because, you know, somebody just shipped it at first. That's the story behind it. It was shipped and that was it. Then everybody had to adapt. If you spend too much time thinking about your logo or your domain name, you'll just be left behind. So just go build, launch, however imperfect. Nobody really cares if it's not perfect. So go build, go experiment, go crazy. And for the users out there, I would say, join us in the new frontier. Don't be afraid of Web3. Don't be afraid of all of the technical challenges. They are very, very worth it. You should really try to be on the forefront of this new revolution in technology, because the way things are going, your access to it might be taken away, or your access to knowing about it might be taken away before you get familiar with the technology. So get familiar with it now so that it cannot be taken away later.
Yeah, I love all this great advice. And I think we're run out of time on this panel, and I'll let you all get back to building, and everyone out there. Thank you so much for everyone being here today. Thank you for your time. And, you know, for all of our viewers watching, hope you enjoyed this. And, you know, tune back into the rest of Reimagine V13. Thank you, everyone.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.